Sometimes you must sit in awe of what humans have been able to do. We've gone from simple foragers on the plain of ancient Africa to a species so numerous and advanced that we now threaten our own existence and seem ready to take the rest of the planet down with us. Historians explore but a tiny fraction of our species' history, just the stuff written down, really. However, when you talk to archaeologists, anthropologists, and paleoanthropologists, you find a longer, deeper, and more fantastical story going back to our first evolution, from hominids long extinct. Now, the theory that humans evolved from previous hominids seems to make a lot of sense, because it does. But there are some avant-garde theorists out there who think that we didn't originate from Africa, but that we originated from somewhere else. Of course, that's ridiculous. It's silly on the face of it. We have a... What the hell? Where am I? It's like the set of some cheap science fiction movie.
You are in my space zone, human Tristan.
Am I on a spaceship?
Yes, you're on my spaceship.
And you are...
I am Qypchak from the planet Fleetflorp. I have traveled from beyond the heavens to teach you the error of your ways. I have assumed the form of the most attractive and beautiful human on this planet.
Is that Thought Slime? Looks like Thought Slime, and you're wearing a ghoulie shirt.
No.
Okay.
I'm Qypchak.
Qypchak? Okay.
I'm Qypchak.
So, I've been abducted, you said?
Yes. Welcome to space.
Am I being detained?
You are being detained.
Okay, all right.
You will do as I say. For too long have you taught the humans incorrect historic knowledge. I will now show you the great deeds that I, Qypchak, have accomplished throughout human history, and you will tell your YouTube audience.
Okay, can you put the gun down?
I can.
Please?
No.
All right, okay, so you are an extraterrestrial.
Yes.
That's big news.
Remain calm.
Okay.
But also be afraid, for I come to you in a spirit of hostility.
Okay. You've been watching over us for eons, you
Correct.
said. Okay. So, what evidence do you have that you've been doing this?
Behold, the viewing globe.
Holy moly. That's a good effect.
This is one of my favorite globes.
Behold the Nazca lines. These Peruvian geoglyphs are proof positive that I visited your people in a previous age. I mean, it's pretty undeniable to see them from this satellite photo on your primitive Earth space satellites. These lines look a lot like airport runways. Combine that with these golden objects found in Colombia. This golden trinket looks suspiciously like an aeroplane, does it not? An aeroplane from space? It must have been an aeroplane in the Americas, centuries before humans would invent them. Maybe this is the site of an ancient alien airport. Or they simply mimicked my technology in order to coax me, their god, back to them. On that note, look at these Nazca geoglyphs. Massive images of various animals and figures made in the soil. Thing is, though, these images can only be seen from above. Now, I might not be an expert on your human anatomy, but I am pretty certain you cannot fly without aeroplanes. Who could these possibly be for? They're for me. They are made for me. Not that it matters, but I rate them pretty subpar in their execution. I would have given all of the animals swords, like your human anime.
All right, Mr. Not Thought Slime. Let's just begin with the Nazca lines. These were made by people who definitely could have made this. The way that it works is that the dirt in that region actually has different colors that are layered on top of each other. So if you just dig up a little bit, you can get a different color. If you guys remember that salt flat scene at the end of Star Wars Episode 8 with the red and white stuff, it's kind of like that. And that's how they could make these geoglyphs. As for the airplane that you mentioned, well, the Qypchak people have been making artifacts based on nature mostly. You can see it in other types of contexts here. The evidence seems to point to that your quote-unquote airplane is actually more a stylized bird or a bat. The only reason it looks like a plane to me is because I'm a modern human. So, you know, context. Honestly, it's not really great to make inferences like this. You can't just say, this looks like a thing I recognize, therefore it is that thing. You kind of need to study culture as a whole. You can definitely take these out of context and say they look like airplanes, but if you look at them in the context of other works, they are rather normal. Not to mention that if they did have airplanes, airplanes leave evidence. You know, we'd probably find parts of airplanes somewhere, anywhere, really? Now let's go to the geoglyphs that you were talking about. They were likely some sort of religious symbol, or maybe some sort of way to irrigate, but they were definitely able to be made by people even if they couldn't see it from their high vantage point. They could just take a smaller picture and just make it bigger. So they knew what the image looked like. They didn't necessarily need to look at it from above. It's impressive, don't get me wrong, but it is doable with ancient tools. And oftentimes people would make things big like this in order to have it last a long time.
That's some pretty good fidelity you've got on that orb.
It is a very good orb. It cost me 400 of your human dollars, plus tax.
Oh, where?
Best Buy!
Man, I haven't gone to that store in a long time. I'm noticing a distinct amount of gravity here. So, like, are we really in space? Like, can I look out a window?
Silence, human. You're in no position to make demands. Besides, everything is technically in space.
Technically correct. The best kind of correct.
If the Nazca lines do not convince your foolish human mind, what about the Great Pyramids?
Well, actually, we have a pretty good idea about how the pyramids were built.
Yes, by aliens. Can you explain the crazy lighting situation?
Looking inside the ancient Egyptian tombs, we don't find layers of silt and carbon like you'd expect if they had used torches. Some people claim they used mirrors, like in the hit film The Mummy, which was more accurate than you might think. By the way, you're welcome for the being you call Brendan Fraser. He was one of my creations in a bygone age. Anyway, the mirrors won't be able to reflect enough light to illuminate these tombs, you see. So, how did the pyramids get lit, as the kids say? Simple. They used light bulbs. Behold, the Denderolite. Here we have carved into stone clear proof that the ancient Egyptians had light bulbs millennia before humans would ever invent them. There are even references to high poles covered in copper, perfect for transmitting human electricity. And what, perchance, powered these light bulbs? Well, my skeptical friend, look at this battery found in ancient Iraq. Yes, within this pot was a tube of copper and an iron rod. The ceramic was sealed, allowing for an acidic chemical reaction to produce electricity, much like your human potato battery. It is these batteries which lit up the ancient Egyptian temples. Again, thanks to the noble gift of the knowledge of electricity my people so benevolently bestowed upon yours.
So this light bulb that you're pointing to definitely looks a lot more like a depiction of something called a Djed pillar and a lotus flower. It's just like with the Qypchak airplane. It looks like a modern thing because I'm a modern person looking at it. But if you look at it without that sort of context, the cultural context of Egyptian people, yeah, you're gonna get some bad inferences. It's actually a rather commonly found ancient symbol in the Egyptian religion. It's a pillar symbol in hieroglyphics that represents stability. This pillar is often associated with their creator god Ptah and another god named Osiris. These are like the gods of the afterlife, the underworld, the dead. Egyptians were obsessed with death, okay? But it's supposed to be Ptah's spine, if I remember correctly. If you look down at the bottom of this light bulb, you can see 2 arms sticking out, which, if you think of it as a backbone, that makes much more sense. There are also snakes coming out from the lotus flower here to represent fertility, which is part of the Egyptian mythology, if you know anything about like the annual flooding of the Nile River. And by the way, if they did use electric lights, there would be a lot that would be needed to function. There would be infrastructure, there would be wires, there would be power plants. There would need to be all sorts of things, and I think that we've investigated a lot of these ancient Egyptian tombs enough to know that they didn't have like wiring in the walls or anything like that. And also, if there were light bulbs, there would be evidence of the places where they were created. There would be evidence left behind. There'd be old burnt out light bulbs somewhere. And we haven't seen anything even close to that. And Egypt is like one of the most studied parts of the ancient world. Honestly, we find out a lot about ancient societies based on their garbage and their waste. And we have no evidence of broken light bulbs or wire or old rundown power plants. And by the way, you wouldn't be able to power a entire temple with light bulbs based on potato batteries. Actually, why don't we talk about your battery for a second? The origin and the purpose of what's called the Baghdad battery, as you're referring to here, is actually rather unclear. It's hypothesized that maybe it functioned as a galvanic cell, like you were saying, maybe used for something like electroplating, which is when you use electricity to gold plate something, or maybe even some sort of weird form of electrotherapy. But there's a lot of issues with that, which is that we haven't found any electroplated objects in this period, and there's a lot of reasons that this thing dug up in Baghdad would not work as a battery. First of all, the way it's designed, the functionality of this battery would decrease the more that you used it, due to like bubbles and corrosion and stuff. But also, the jar was sealed with asphalt, which would make it difficult to empty out and refill with new battery juice. The battery that you're referring to here also has no terminals. You know, the things that are on the sides of batteries that you need to make a circuit. The iron rod that you're referring to here didn't even actually project outside of the asphalt plug, and neither did the copper tube. Think about it, look at this thing. Where would you put the wires on this thing to make a circuit? On top of all of that, the power level would be really low. To power anything for any length of time, you would need an unimaginable amount of these things, which would require a lot of production that we have not been able to find in the archaeological records, and it's highly doubtful, given the things that we found, that they were secretly making millions of these Baghdad batteries. Most archaeologists these days actually think that this was more of a storage vessel for something like old sacred scrolls or something.
You don't happen to be Beck, are you? Because if so, I have some questions about your methods.
Yes, of course I am. Just allow me to space Google this Sobek character. How do I spell my name?
Sobek.
Oh, God, no, not that, no, gross. Calm down. Can I get a trans rights in chat, though? Anyway, behold this carving.
That just looks like some dude.
Not just any dude, I'm afraid.
Straight up, this is a stone slab found in Maya ruins in Palenque. It decorated the lid of the tomb of the great Pakal. On top of his tomb is this impressive carving. Note the images of him sitting and fiddling with what appears to be buttons and controls. He even has a breathing apparatus attached to his nose, and what looks like rocket exhaust coming out the back of his chair. The evidence here is quite a slam dunk, I'm afraid. That's right. My people also play basketball. I'm afraid this is proof positive of an ancient astronaut, one of the many gifts I have given to your strange and unworthy species.
Okay, this is definitely a funky carving, but what about context? Looking at the iconography, it actually looks pretty straightforward if you look at other pieces of art on the site. You can't just remove artifacts from context and make a point. Archaeology is much more complex than that. If you talk to experts on Maya cosmology, what they would say is that these are what are called world trees. Below this is not rocket exhaust, it's a symbol of the mouth of a giant two-headed serpent, which is the Maya symbol for the passage to the afterlife, which would make sense because this was put on the lid of someone's tomb. The concept of the afterlife for the Maya people is actually really interesting, but that's different.
Plus, this is like a piercing. It's much more likely that this is just a person put on the lid of a coffin instead of you hooking them up with a rocket ship and them choosing this coffin to be the entirety of all of their depictions of it.
Yeah, I guess that one was a bit of a stretch when I... Hey, wait a minute, shut up! It's like you don't even want to be my herald.
Well, with the Interstellar kidnapping, the employee compensation package better be pretty good, or at very least, maybe you can give me some actually good evidence for ancient aliens?
Well, technically, you wouldn't be an employee, you'd be freelance, but we do have a ping pong table.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So, the evidence?
If it's evidence you want, behold, the stone heads of Easter Island.
How did you get this?
All aliens have one. Look at it, it looks just like me.
No comment, but
Well, the antennas aren't. They fell off, but...
okay. But we have a really good idea of how these were made, and even how they were moved to the position they're in.
By aliens?
No, by people, actually. Have you ever moved a refrigerator?
One time.
The kind of shuffling movement, they actually did an experiment to show how you can, they shuffled them down the island. It's actually really cool.
Silence! This is no mere refrigerator. Can you explain the ancient dragon fortress of southwestern Iceland?
Oh, never heard of that one. Just give me a sec. According to this, that's not real.
No, it's definitely real. I was there once, saw a dragon, which are also real.
Okay. Well, I don't have any evidence to work off for that one. Sorry.
It looks like facts and logic won't work on you.
Your trigger finger's really tight right now.
Yes, I have poor trigger discipline. I see that there's no getting through to you Earth SJWs with facts and logic. Behold, the mind ray. Oh, I think the safety's... Have you ever used one of these things before?
I think...
I don't...
If you just...
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank
good,
you.
good. No
Thank
problem,
you.
no problem.
All right.
It's too many things.
Foolish human, you are unworthy of my gifts. The ping pong table, the pill that makes you never have to poop again. Your ancestors were just as foolish and primitive as you, which is why they never could have built these marvelous technological, beautiful thing-a-majigs.
Well, hey, hang on a minute. That's selling my ancestors short quite a bit.
Kind of the point.
Let me use the orb one more time and let me explain something to you.
Okay, but be careful with it.
I don't need to fight every single theory of aliens to cast serious doubts on your claims. Otherwise, I'd be here forever, and by the time I was done, another season of Ancient Aliens would have aired, and I'd have to address all the new claims. If this were a YouTube video and I left it here, someone would write the ancient astronaut theory they believed in the comments and think they owned me. This is my 9/11 truther video all over again. Well, not this time. Our ancient ancestors weren't idiots. They were ingenious and resourceful in ways we arguably fall short of. They didn't have thousands of generations of built-up ideas and technology, but they were still capable of the feats you say were impossible. And have you noticed that these ancient astronaut people haven't made any claims that the Parthenon or Colosseum needed alien technology? Why is it almost never Europeans, alien? Just because a culture isn't white doesn't mean they're incompetent. This is just racist pseudoscience. And a lot of pseudo-archaeological claims are made using racism as their base assumption. The idea that somehow race has some sort of biological base, which it definitely does not. Trust me, Scientists have tried to prove that, and oftentimes we think that these people were incapable of the amazing feats they've done because historians have rejected that the ancestors of indigenous people were capable of such amazing things. So obviously they needed help from some sort of outside civilization. These such assumptions about people other than your own is in fact the primary element of racism. And unfortunately, this probably explains why a lot of archaeological pseudoscience is so popular. These are just the most fantastic claims of pseudoarchaeology. There's an entire cottage industry of people who sell this stuff. They fake results, they write tome after tome, like Eric von Däniken, who somehow has written over 20 books in the last 4 decades, doing what amounts to saying things look modern, or people in the past couldn't possibly have done something impressive, mostly in places where people aren't white, or claiming that because something is misunderstood, it must be aliens. People like him do it because they're after money or fame. Sometimes they manufacture a past to justify their racism, nationalism, or religion. Sometimes they desire a more romantic and interesting past, or are seriously suffering from delusions. Either way, what they're doing isn't archaeology. Archaeology is procedural, a scientific process which does the dirty and grueling work of piecing together what actually happened with evidence.
And what about you, Gleep Glorp, from the planet Fleep Florp? The possibility of an alien, an intelligent alien that came all the way to Earth and also looks humanoid is practically impossible. I'm going to unleash my secret weapon. Isaac Arthur. Behold!
When trying to predict the likelihood of other civilizations in our galaxy, Drake's equation is both the best and worst argument for those civilizations. Its factors focus on how many habitable planets there are, which is likely billions, and how many of those will develop life and the ability to transmit signals we might detect. Unfortunately, it ignores the possibility that such civilizations might spread out over time to new stars, and do so very rapidly on astronomical timelines, potentially across the entire galaxy in just 1 million or so years, an eye blink on galactic timelines, so that if even one of these potential civilizations has the desire and capacity to do so, they can leave such a massive footprint on the galaxy that they would be impossible to miss, and have no motivation to hide. Indeed, they are not limited to just this galaxy, but can spread to neighbors too. In this regard, it's not strange that aliens might have come and visited Earth in the past. It's strange that they'd have done so and left no overt footprint here or anywhere we might detect them. Such a scenario is only exacerbated if we consider any technology which makes traveling and expanding such a civilization easier, such as faster-than-light travel or communication, since it means they can get everywhere much faster and coordinate their efforts far better. Without that, even ignoring technologies like cybernetics and genetic engineering, such a civilization is doomed to fragment into 1 billion divergent ones. But that would hardly stop expansion, any more than the thousands of human tribes of prehistory stopped expanding and dividing just because they couldn't talk to their more distant cousins. So even if one of these tribes had visited us and later left for some reason, one would have to ask why they never returned or why nobody else had come by. If we were interesting to one of these civilizations, why not to the others? And why would each have similar policies about dealing with primitive species? The only two aspects of ancient aliens which tends to make sense is that they would be interested in us, even if it was just their anthropology departments, and that they might resemble us. But not because they actually did resemble us, at least physically. While the human form is a fairly logical shape, and the humanoid might not be an uncommon one to evolve, there are plenty of other forms evolution might spawn that would work just as well, if not better. Even then, humanoid is hardly human, and you'd expect those rare few who had that rough shape to barely resemble us beyond that. Rather, they'd probably resemble us in mind, in that they'd likely be a curious and social group by nature, since the incurious or antisocial wouldn't likely spawn technological civilizations. As to physically resembling us when they visited, that might be achieved simply by employing some equivalent of androids, as it's easier to learn about and interact with a group you resemble in appearance and behavior. While there might be species out there who by coincidence resemble us quite closely physically, there'd likely be millions nearer who did not, but who still found us interesting. So if you encounter an alien that looks like you, it's no coincidence, nor a sign of distant relation, but intentional mimicry.
All right. Oh yeah, it's just about done. Okay, good. So, who are you?
Do you really want to know, human? This
Yeah.
may come as a bit of a shock to you, but I am not Gleep Glorp from the planet Fleep Floop, or whatever. I'm Thought Slime, from youtube.com/Thought Slime.
Yeah, I pretty much guessed.
Yeah, I got you pretty good, didn't I? I bet you thought this whole thing I was an alien, I was teaching you about ancient aliens, but I think you learned a thing or two about pseudoscience today, believing crazy claims without evidence.
But I was the one who did all the...
No need to thank me, Tristan.
You didn't do anything.
My job here is done.
Okay. So, where are we?
We're in space. That part is
okay,
real.
okay.
Yeah, we are actually in space.
Is there a way back?
No. We're gonna die.
I just want to step out and say thank you to all the patrons who are making it possible for me to try some of this strange new stuff. I'm actually able to run this channel as a full-time job, or at least try to, because you've been so amazing to pledge as little as $1 a month to keep the ball rolling. You can pledge over at patreon.com/stepbackhistory, or if a commitment isn't your thing, you can give donations at paypal.me/stepbackhistory. If you can't or don't want to contribute financially, I totally get that, but you still want to help Step Back, then share this or a favorite video of mine with your friends, families, or communities that you think will like it. Word of mouth is vital because the algorithm does not like this channel. Also, subscribe to Thought Slime. He was excellent for being part of this. And for everyone watching, thank you. Was that all a dream?